The following episode contains stories of depression, anxiety, and suicide. Listener discretion is advised.
Hey y'all, it's your homegirl Bob, the motherfucking drag queen in this bitch. Y'all niggas ready to talk about some motherfucking mental health up in this bitch, son?
Oh my
Hey.
gosh, Bob. Pew, pew.
Hi everyone, welcome
Hello.
to Town Hall, a Black queer podcast, the podcast where we journey through a theme by sharing stories, music, poetry, and art of varying depth and hilarity. And Peppermint, you are one of the deepest, varied, and hilarious people I've ever met in my life.
What are you talking about?
I'm just saying how apropos it is
Is
that
that
you're
true?
that you are. Yeah, oh for sure. Actually, I actually certainly believe that. 100% actually.
Well, thank you. Likewise, you crack me up to no end. You know, I think people know that by now.
you
I think
you
people
and
at
I
least know that.
you and I recently, the last time we hung out was to go see Jinx Monsoon
In
in
Chicago on
Chicago, and then
Broadway.
afterwards we went and ate at in Panama in Hell's Kitchen, which
Oh my God.
we were at the you have to imagine this. Me and Peppermint and Sasha Velour are all in the window of Empanada Mama
Worst
in
place
Hell's
to sit, but
Kitchen.
it was full, so we had no choice.
So all the but also it is the quietest place in Empanada Mama because the rest back there is so
True.
loud with the music. I have reached an age where I don't want the music in a restaurant to be oomta 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 oomta. I really need it to just be a little
Yeah.
like turn it down.
The
Anyway,
music
so
is really not for the customers. It's really for the servers. You know that.
yes, and I think to get us out of there faster.
Yeah.
Actually,
Yeah.
so we're not comfortable. But you have to imagine me, Peppermint, three like famous drag queens in the corner of a like a window display. So we were causing quite a
Their
scene
Macy's
at
window display.
at the Empanada Mama.
And
You remember that
darling,
queen
it
who
was
got the
almost a meet and
cocktail?
greet.
You remember that queen that got the cocktail and was drinking it outside?
Girl, she got the cocktail, and she was already carrying on before she got that cocktail.
But it
And
was
she
a
was standing
to-go
outside and
cocktail.
talking to herself, and just opening the cocktail was like a whole episode.
On the street. I said, oh my goodness.
And then the way she sashayed away with her hair strutting, I was like, Miss Thing. Maybe you don't. I don't know about that cocktail. What's in that?
You know,
cocktail?
I think that I genuinely I love whenever I get a chance to come back to New York City. I think New York City. Some people that make New York City makes them anxious and it's bad for their mental health. New York City is really good. I love. You know the folks who are like, I gotta get out of this city. I just gotta get out of this. I was never one of those girls.
Yeah, it's the daily stressors. Like, you know, the I think the things that New York City does to one's psyche and one's mental are like about the daily stressors. You're like you are confronted with your um income or lack thereof on a not even an hourly basis, minutely basis. And you know, whether it's literally how much money you make or going to your job that you may or may not like or living in a place that's admittedly probably a lot smaller and in worse condition than you would want. But you know, but the larger thing is like, you know, all of the community that's here. You can walk down the street and see somebody that you know. You can walk down the street and see
Right?
some famous person, and then you're sitting next to them on the subway. And you know, people end up, like everywhere, end up having a sort of routine that they follow, I think, in the city, where
Yeah.
a bar that they always go to, or a restaurant that they always go to,
A watering
and then
hole, a coffee shop.
yeah, and then that is a party, becomes like a part of your life, and all these are the things that like so many people write movies and TV shows about, right?
Yeah.
And so I do think that, but living in a big city is no doubt definitely stressful and hard on your mental health. You know,
Do you have a rapport with your bodega worker?
I do. Like, I actually trust them, believe it or
Yeah,
not. Like,
for sure.
I've been in situations where I had to leave the apartment, and I was like, I need to leave my keys. Let me leave my keys with the deli guy, and then go to the deli guy and ask for the. It's like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, my guy, his name was Chogi. Shout
Hmm.
out to Chogi wherever you are, Chogi. I'm sending you all the love in the world, Chogi from Amsterdam, Delhi. shout out to Chogi. But
He
also
got
one thing
fired.
about New York City,
Just
he,
kidding.
I don't know, he probably I think he moved to a bodega in Queen. He moved before I moved actually.
Oh,
One
okay.
of the things about New York City, and again, trigger warning, is I feel like New Yorkers are often faced with the conversation of death, like a lot. I feel like I've never been anywhere where I was so often reminded that people on a pretty regular basis take their
Die?
lives in your in no, not just die, but like take their lives in New York City. Like you'll hear it on the way to the on the way to work. They'll be like that you'll be like someone jumped on the platform, and you hear it a lot. And I remember when I first moved to it was very jarring to be like, I was like, wait, what? And the New Yorkers were like, yeah, yeah, that happens here. And you kind of become like, oh yeah, I guess that I don't know. And then I found myself getting desensitized to it over time after I had lived in New York City for so long.
Well, maybe the difference between a place like New York is like there's there's New York is one of those places where like in a big city, in very large city, like metropolitan city, like with skyscrapers and things like that, where traffic is an issue, um, and where you can get around without having to have a car. New York is one of those places where you're exposed to other people and their
A
stuff, whether they're
lot.
having a good day or a bad day or whatever kind of day. You're out in the world around people, other humans that can come up to you, that you can talk to, that you can see, that you can meet. And so people carrying around their stuff, you see it. And if somebody's
That's
going to have,
true.
do some sort of self harm or utilizing the train system in a way, you're going to see it. Whereas, like in other places, they're at home or they're in their car or they're alone in their car on the road, and they're the only person driving on the road because it's a small town. And so I do think it certainly happens, and it might even happen at the same in the same proportions. But since
You just
there are
don't
so
hear
many
about it
more
as
people
much.
here, you just hear about it more, you know.
Yeah, because we commingled a lot more
But it's
in New
not
York City.
like and I don't know the context of this, but I remember the only reason I'm even aware of this, and that's certainly my fault. I can learn more about it is when the Logan, whatever those two white guys are, I think they're brothers or twins
Logan
or something.
Paul.
Yeah. One of them went to a sort of forest in Japan
Yeah, that forest. Yeah,
where people were engaging in self-harm, I think.
yeah.
Um
It's kind
and
of like
so
known
they
that this forest is where people go to in
go. And so they
to
went
clock
in
out,
and
to check out
it
of
was
life.
viewed as exploitation and all of that, and it was probably a very insensitive thing to post on a YouTube video for likes. But it's not like we have that type of situation in New York.
Yeah,
To
no,
people who
no.
are listening, you should still come to New York this summer and
No,
visit.
New York's a lovely place. I go to New York City all the time. And once I have enough money, I will be living in both New York and LA. But as of right now, I'm just gonna have my one little my one little place.
And
Um,
there you have it. New York and the big cities, because I don't want this to be about New York. Big cities do remind you of how much money you don't have.
yeah,
There it is right there.
true. Here's a question I have for you. Do you have are you I mean, I don't know if you can ask people this. I mean, we're friends, so I can ask you, but we're on air. But I'm gonna ask you anyway. We can whatever. Are you in therapy?
How dare you? I'm not currently in therapy because I think it's the mental health, the healthcare system in general. We know it's really difficult, and I was surprised. I remember trying to find a physician and that being a little bit of work, and then I was trying to find a therapist, and I could not believe all of the hoops. And I'm sure that there's certain red tape there that might be useful and good or as a failsafe, but I do remember being so like getting so frustrated with the system and the way that it works and all the protocols and things you have to sign up. I remember thinking, "Honey, just forget it. Like this is causing me more stress than the breakup that I want to go talk to somebody about." And so, just
Like
having to call.
I'll just eat ice cream.
Yeah, exactly. Ice cream is already there. Like you have to like call and first find a location that's like convenient, and then call, and then no one can talk, so then they'll call you back, and then They call you back and they check your insurance. You got to wait to see about the insurance, and then after that, then you got to go in and do some sort of like evaluation intake sort of thing where they'll talk to you, and if it's one of those like group therapy places where like you could, not group therapy, but place where like there's more than one therapist,
Yeah.
um and they'll like assign you to somebody that they think is a good match. And then if it's not a good match, you have like a month to like say it's not a good match, but then it takes like a month to figure out if it's a good match,
Yeah.
because you know, it's
It
just
is a
like too
lot.
much. And then you
I
get
10
put
out
on a
of
waiting list. They're like, you're perfect for Amber. Or maybe I shouldn't say their name. And they put you on a waiting list. You're
Oh,
perfect for Dr.
is
So and
that
so.
really the
That's like
therapist
our first guest.
that you were going to, is that the real therapist?
No, but it's the name of our first guest. So like, oh, sorry.
Oh.
Um,
Oh.
then they match you with somebody, and they're like, you're perfect for Dr. So and so, and you're like, well, when can I see them? And they're like, you're on their waiting list for 6 months.
They're
And
like,
it's
oh, the
like,
reason why you're perfect for that so and so is because they're the best one. So it's not that you're perfect with
exactly,
them; it's just that they're perfect for everyone. So the doctor will see you in 2027. And just for
exactly,
those listening, this was recorded in 2023. Just for
exactly.
context, in case you're
And since
listening
we're
in the year
giving
2050.
since we're giving a little notes and disclaimers, well, first of all, the show is about mental health. That's it. It's not about New York City. But are you now? I'm going to ask: are you? Have you been able to procure yourself a mental health professional? And how
Yeah.
important is that? Or do you think, in how useful has it been dealing with mental health just in your life?
So I have a therapist, and I haven't seen her in about a month. I probably should go back to her soon though. But I went through a breakup, and I was like, it was literally said, I was like, I went through a breakup and I want to talk to a therapist about it. And it was really nice
Mm-hmm.
that I have a queer affirming therapist who I don't have to explain
Mm-hmm.
pronouns. I don't have to describe what trans people are. I don't have to go into deep detail about any of those things, which feels really, really nice to have that in a therapist. But she was hard to find because of
Initially.
all of the parameters that I was looking
Mm-hmm.
for in a therapist. Like, I don't want to have to spend the first, day, the first hour that we spend together explaining pronouns and trans people and queerness and all that kind of stuff. So
Yeah.
it did had took a minute. But once we got in the flow, it was great. And I this is my first time having therapy. I am 36 years old, and I've been raw dogging life. No therapy, nothing, the whole time.
Well, I'll tell you. I don't know what I was gonna say.
Well, I'm excited to hear about our guest and listen to what they have to say in regards
I'm excited as
to
well.
their experiences with mental health. So with that in mind, I'm really excited about our first. What
Well,
tell us a
wait,
little bit
before
about
we
our
do
first
that,
host.
before we do that, I do want to. It's. I think we should just go ahead, and we have to. Uh, we might as well talk about the pink glittery elephant in the room. Um, for those of you that have been waiting to hear, we know that connected to mental health, especially folks within the LGBTQ community, this is a queer podcast. Our mental health is challenged all the time, but especially at times when we are being attacked at the legislative level in our country. And so there's all these attacks, these bills and policies that are surging through legislation, legislatures all over the country. And so Bob and I have a lot to say about that, and we actually are going to address that on our Black Queer Town Hall page. And so please, just go after you listen to this, go on over to that, and you can watch
On
the video
YouTube.
on our YouTube page, where we talk about the drag ban, drag bill that's called, the drag. They're calling it the drag bill that obviously affects the queer community, and then some of the things that we can do, and just like all the things we have to say, because it is getting wild. And also, the topic of drag is clearly something that is so dear to us. We're going to let the cat out of the bag a little bit. We're dedicating a lot of time to talking about drag in season 2, which we're already planning of our podcast. So that is just a secret for you listeners here. Now, with that being said, let's jump right into it. I'd love you to listen to our first account. This is from Amber, who has had a late in life ADHD diagnosis. And I think Amber's story is really compelling. So check it out.
My name is Amber Friendly. I am an actor. My most recent role, I've been on The Morning Show as a recurring character, Layla Bell. I play a character named Pearl in the newest season of Perry Mason on HBO. Prior to that, I did a little stint on NCIS. My journey with mental health has definitely evolved over the years, as I've just gotten to know myself better. And it was definitely something that without having the language for it, I was really aware of when I was young. I was almost like an old person in a little body. like, like I kind of came out that way, and so even from a young age, I spent a lot of time on my own. I would read on my own. Looking back on it now, I can see that I knew it then, but I did struggle with a lot of anxiety and even like low grade depression from a very early age. I identify as bisexual right now, and I'm curious if I'm more pansexual. I'm still like discovering that. But the interesting thing for me in terms of like my queerness is that it was always there. And I was recently reminded, my mom reminded me recently that like when I was 8, I just went up to her and was like, I like boys and girls, and it never, people have asked me about it and I'm like, it just doesn't, I'm like, what do you mean you only like one? I'm like, really? Like even what, I'm like, that doesn't really like you, really? The interesting thing for me is I have an older sister. She's 6 years older than me. And my sister identifies as a lesbian. And she, with that kind of gap, basically she hit puberty, she hit like that awareness earlier. And so in a way, she, was the big sister in a lot of ways. And in some of that, it's like she kind of, I don't know how to explain it. Like, I don't think that I had to struggle with it as much as she did. She sort of paved the way and dealt with, my parents freaking out at first, and then by the time, I started talking about it, they were like, oh, okay. So I definitely dealt with anxiety and probably low grade depression. I was put on medication for depression. I believe it was Prozac when I was under 18. I was under 18 and it was like the worst thing ever. It was fucking terrible. Wait, am I allowed to curse? Okay. Yeah, it was fucking terrible. The way that it happened, I'm not gonna lie, like they didn't they didn't talk to my parents. The doctor didn't even really say anything to me. Like I was at like a regular doctor's appointment and they prescribed me. Oh my goodness. See you asked things and now I'm remembering stuff. I also going back, my parents put me in therapy when I was in grade school. So and part of it was, I think, my parents separated when I was young and then they divorced. But they were really amicable. But that's still hard. And I spent a lot of time alone. And I think recently my mom told me, like, I'm talking like grade school, like second, third grade. Recently my mom, we were talking about it and she was like, yeah, you seemed really angry. And we were just concerned about you. So, in school, there was a school counselor that I would go to, and I didn't think of it as therapy. I thought of it as, I go and I talk to this lady and I play with Play-Doh, and for like an hour, there's like a special class that I went to, but I guess I had that experience. And I think now as I've gotten older, I'm in my 30s now. It's interesting. My like mental health has always been at the front of my mind. I haven't always had the language for it. And then I very recently, like in the last like few, like 3-4 months, was diagnosed with ADHD. And I was like, oh shit, that makes a lot of sense. It was something that I would kind of joke about and kind of think of, over the years. And I think a big thing, why I never really, really looked into it, was that when people talk about ADD or ADHD, there's like a very specific image they have in mind. And let me just talk about myself here. Like for me, I thought about little boys running around and jumping and bouncing off of walls, right? And that was my thought of what, when people would reference ADD, ADHD, whatever, that's what would come up. And it wasn't until like time kind of went on when I started to think like, oh, at least for me, the hyperactivity, like a lot of the people I talk to and they say like, oh, you don't seem like you have ADHD. And it's like, well, because all the hyperactivity for me isn't, most of it's not external. It's actually in my mind. It's that my mind is like constantly running. So I'm experimenting with, medication, and, some it's an option for some people, to treat their ADHD, whatever. I think probably the biggest clue that probably should have clued me in. So some people will abuse ADHD meds, I'm not that interested in that. But years and years ago, I remember somebody giving me like an Adderall, and they're like, here, whatever. I was like, oh, okay. And I took it, and I remembered literally sitting in my apartment and going, wait, is this what normal people feel like? Like I looked around and I was like, and people talked about like, oh, I take it to do this and to do this and do that. And I just was sitting and I was like, wait a minute, it just got quiet. Like what? Like, and then and honestly, and I was going over some stuff, kind of thinking on reflecting on some things recently, and I was like, maybe that should have been my first clue. That like, maybe you should make a doctor's appointment. I'll be honest too. I think it manifests differently it can manifest differently for people who are socialized as women, and I think especially for Black women. When people would talk about like, well, it looks like this and like this and like this. I'm like, I don't have the fucking like option to, I excelled in school up to a point. I excelled in school and I did have a lot of difficulties, but some of it is like that I would think of as that people would talk about with ADHD. It's like I feel I don't have the option to just like fall apart. So now as time goes on with that mindset, sometimes you do start to fall apart because you just, you burn out. Yeah. And I think, I've definitely been, recovering perfectionist, recovering, burnout-ish, whatever you want to call it. But I think a lot of that is from that of like fighting like this stuff going on inside and having this thought in my head of like, but I can't fall apart, that friction, that tension. I think that honestly, like that, I kind of reached a breaking point with that. And that's what made me like kind of start reaching out to doctors about like, I've gone to therapy over the years and talked about anxiety and depression, and I've had medication for depression and this and this and that. But for the ADHD in particular, it's just like, I feel like the way I process stuff is different than other people. And I really want to like honor that and get good with myself because, it's like, cool, I made it to this point, but I don't know if I can make it to X more years, like just doing things exactly the same. I need to find a new way. My initial reaction was that it was a relief, and it also made me sad because I wish that like hearing that and like we went through and we were, when I went and my doctor was like, oh girl, you like, we went through the whole list, or like you hit every single thing on this list. You like fell down the branch and hit every branch, like and I was like, oh, I wish that like if I had known this sooner, I probably would have had more compassion for myself over the years. So that I think was almost like a mourning of like, I wish that I had been kinder to myself. For me, at least, I reached a point where, life comes at you. No matter how good you are at things, life is going to come at you. Life's going to life. And I've always been very like hard on myself. And that's been a benefit. I've gotten good things out of that. There's been really amazing things that I've gotten out of that, with like that level of discipline and just stubbornness. You could also say hyperfixation, but whatever. I just kind of reached a point where, especially over the last few years, but just over the years in general, where I realized like, I can't keep going and be this hard on myself, because the outside world will do it for me. Shit will come up and knock me down a peg. So stuff that I don't even expect will come up and like really just humble me, humble anybody. And so it's just not and it's just not enjoyable. It's not that much fun, and it just kind of grinds you down. And I'm really trying to unlearn that like self-talk where I've just been so hard on myself. When I feel healthiest, I'm talking to the people in my life. I have like regular check-ins with them. I will be honest with you, the last few years have really thrown off a lot of the routines that I have built over the years, and I'm still kind of rediscovering them. Like, I'm not one of those, everybody's has for a variety of reasons, I'm not quite in it's a post-pandemic world. I'm like, I'm like, my mortgage depends on, yeah, no, and I just don't want to get sick. And I'm just like, so like a lot of the habits that I had really got thrown off. And I'm still kind of like struggling to figure that out. But I will say it involves community. It involves other people around me. Yeah. That's the first thing that comes to my mind. And I'm sleeping well. And I'm eating. Dead ass. like like sometimes you just need to eat something or like go to bed. Sometimes like, oh my God, it's like, bitch, just fucking go to sleep. Just like drink some tea, put on a blanket, read a book. Actually, that is I love to read and go in bed. But yeah, sometimes you just need to just go to sleep and start the new day. If you look at my bookshelf, I have so many self-help books. I've been to therapy off and on over the years. I watch like the TED Talks and the inspirational whatever. If I was a religious person, I would probably make reference to that. I'm not necessarily a religious person. I do feel spiritual, but my dear friend, Marianne Day Carroll, I'm going to tell her to watch this now or listen to this now. But she's just so wise. I don't even know. She said this years ago. It's probably decades ago that my friend said this. And she was like going through her studies and, she's a beautiful human being. She really is. She, I could go on and on about how wonderful I think she is. But the punchline is, I remember we were talking about something she was studying and it was about, looking at different periods of history and this and this and that. And something she said to me, she said, Amber, here's the thing. Everybody, when you look throughout history, the crazy thing is that everybody just got here. We like go and look at history, like this person who lived like 200 years ago, is like, no, they were like 30 something or 40 something or 50 something. And in the span of like history, that's nothing. We all just got here. We're all just, and to me, it's like, so we're all just stumbling around figuring it out. And to me, as somebody who like for a long time, I think I almost valued other people's opinions more than my own for a long time. And now I'm like, wait, I don't even like you. Why do I give a shit what you think? That really meant a lot to me. To be like, oh, they don't, I mean, I can be inspired by somebody and I can seek wisdom in somebody, but they don't fucking know either. I know for sure that it has been a privilege to live this life. And by that, I don't just mean like, oh, I get to do like fancy things or anything. I mean, like, I was born into a family of people that just fucking loved me. They loved me and respected me, and they cared about, even from a little age, they saw me as my own person. Just wanted to see me go out in the world and not just be like great, but like just be the fullest version of myself. And I'm lucky to still have people in my life like that. That's what I know for sure. And I'm really lucky and grateful to have that in my life.
All right, listen, we have another story coming up for you all. This story is from a wonderful person named Joey, and Joey is a flight systems engineer at NASA, which is just so. I mean, I know there are people who work at NASA, but I'm also like, there are people who work at NASA. That's wild. This one does talk about some depression and suicide attempts. So please just guard your mental health and do what is appropriate for you. And this is Joey.
My name is Joseph Jefferson. I am a flight systems engineer at NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory. We help operate the spacecraft. So I'm on a team that operates the SMAP spacecraft, which is a spacecraft that orbits the Earth, looking for soil moisture. The NEOI spacecraft, which is a spacecraft that also orbits the Earth, looking for near-Earth objects like comets and potentially hazardous asteroids that may hit the Earth. And Voyager, which is currently the farthest spacecraft from the Earth, and it's the first spacecraft to leave the solar system. So I've struggled with mental health pretty much throughout my life, mostly anxiety, induced depression, and things like that. And it's always been a battle and always will continue to be a battle. I've unfortunately had a few suicide attempts in my early 20s. So the first one during New Year's, actually the Rose Parade, I went out with some friends the night before, so alcohol was kind of involved, which really was a major factor in all three always. Came home alone and felt very like alone and just not, again, very, and also a feeling of anger was really present. Just angry at the world because I didn't fit in anywhere, and I saw this negativity and pain across all of the areas that I didn't fit in. So I saw pain in the Black community. I saw pain in the queer community. I saw even pain and not so much though, but I saw pain in the white community though still. Like, but and it was palpable. So in that moment, I was kind of just convinced, and so I just went to my bathroom, took every pill I could find. Yeah, and then I woke up in a hospital bed, and they said they pumped my stomach, and I got 5150, which means you're committed into the hospital. And ironically, because it was a new year, my my paperwork didn't go through for my benefits, and so they put me in a psych ward, which was one that wasn't for people that have health insurance, and so it was like extra real. And I mean, that was one of the most traumatic. I think the most traumatic part of my life was that moment. You hear screams at 2 a.m. Some people, my roommate thought I was his dad. He's like 50 years old, and it was a really scary, crazy moment. It kind of put me even in a deeper depression because I now kind of revealed to my family and to some of my friends that I was really struggling mentally, and it kind of othered me in a different way. And so that's where the two others kind of came from. I had identity issues and started coming out the closet to my family as first as gay and then as bisexual. I also grew up living with the white family, living with the Black family half, because I did figure skating growing up, like from 4 to 14. I lived with my coaches out of the summer, and we would go up to the skating rink every other day. And it was just easier that way because they lived about like an hour away. And definitely saw differences between the two families, but I also saw similarities. I saw that there was just love in both houses as well. and more alike than different. But the prejudice that kind of came with being usually the only Black person in the skating rink, and you start to look down upon your Blackness and see it as something that is like almost like a curse or something that holds you down. And that kind of pushed me away from my Blackness and Black culture. College, I was in a white fraternity instead of a Black one, and didn't even know Black fraternities existed. The thing about it is that my family loved me throughout, and Black Thanksgivings and Black holidays and things like that. Like the culture was always Stevie Wonder playing, and so I always had like a good hook to it. It was just something else was trying to push it out, and that's what led to all this confusion and a big storm that was hard to get out of. Everywhere I turned, there was always judgment and always some kind of making me feel not a part of the group. And I kind of just wanted to know where I fit in. I've recently, I'm writing a book on this, trying to link physical laws and physics to kind of like social laws. So it's called LAUNCH, which is an acronym, but it's really a systematic approach to realizing your dreams. And I'd use a framework of how we develop spacecraft. And in space, you have to think of everything, and it's extremely a lot of different variables that make it really hard. But we take our time, and especially at JPL, we tend to be successful. And so the acronym is LOVE. So you first start out with love. You got to find what you love, and that's your fuel. And you can find other fuels. You can have spite, you can have anger, you can have like, I'm going to prove these people wrong and all that kind of stuff. But if you find what you love, that is the best fuel because it'll never run out. And then the A stands for aim. And so you need to plan ahead. So for spacecraft, we actually take like decades sometimes to try to figure out a trajectory to get to that planet. And then you do the same thing for your dreams. Use unleash. And so that's when you launch the rocket and you start working at it and you just go as hard as you possibly can. And N is for note. So once you get after you fired off your first engine, you take a step back and you reevaluate, because in spacecraft, whenever we launch a rocket, there's always going to be some error there. And so I think the life is the same way when you're going after your dreams. You're probably not going to go exactly the way you plan it. And so you got to adapt. And then C is continue. And so after you take note, you start working again. And then H is hone, where you just hone out all your skills and do the cycle over and over again. And so, yeah, it's really designed to be a really systematic approach, hands-on approach to getting to the dream that you love. And that love is really important. Not just try to get money and not just try to get status, but really love it. And then you can achieve it no matter what. Every action has an opposite and equal reaction in physics. So that's really important to rocket flight. So we push a whole bunch of stuff down, the rocket goes up in an equal manner. And I thought about it, I think it's the same way for humans and for people, that our negative actions bring the exact equal and opposite negative reaction back to us. And the same thing for love, our and positive actions. And if you only kind of worry about that and just keep that in your head, only positive can come back to you. And it gives you the awareness that other people giving negative emotions to you is only going to bring negative emotions to them. And as long as you are steadfast and grounded, their negativity will just pass right through you. And so that just alone has helped me with judgment, from not feeling, if I feel certain negativity coming or for something that I may be feeling like I'm othered for or whatever, I just let it pass through me and only give love back. And it's a really powerful thing. Knowing that, like, right now it feels like the negativity is kind of winning, right? And it's like overwhelming. And everywhere you look in the news, everywhere you see it, that it looks like it's going to win and take us all over, But to know that not only is that like duality there, but things work in cycles in this universe. There's really nothing that stands still. Everything vibrates, everything oscillates, even you. All of your atoms are all vibrating. And so for me, it's like, I see that if it looks like negative is winning, I know that there's probably a cycle that's going to bring positive to make it win real quick. And And that's just kind of like how the universe works. But this is kind of like, fringe things in my own thoughts. This isn't anything like, really studied, but I just think that's like reality. And that keeps me grounded. I just know that at the end of the day, I'm going to put as much good as I possibly can. And overall, it's probably going to be okay. I know what it was like to try to take my life, and knowing that after that, good things happened, even though in that moment it seemed like nothing could ever make anything better at all. It was a complete hurricane, Cat 5. That hurricane still passed, and the sunshine came out again. And so I knew in that kind of moment that most likely things will probably get better, even though it seemed so stressful. Like deep down, I felt like, but it's probably going to be okay. I did intensive therapy, obviously after the suicide attempts, and when I really kind of going through it, I'll continue my therapy. But lately, I've just tried to keep it there as a way to outlet things that may be bothering me. The medication I got put on, really took away my creative outlets. I'm a classically trained pianist, won international awards and things like that. And so music's really close to my heart, and being creative is really close to my heart. And when I was on medication, I kind of went away, but it helped with my mental health, and it helped kind of calm all these crazy thoughts down. And so I used it more as a tool during the parts when it was really dangerous. In my early 20s, I stayed on medication, and it did help me. But if I didn't really, really need it, I used holistic methods. So like meditation, yoga, just really being moving and movement, being outside more, and all of these different tools have helped replace it. And so it's really, for me, in my opinion, but I'm not a doctor, it's where you are in life. You are a unique arrangement of atoms that is a 1 in a bajillion chance was created. And not only that, was created for a purpose, and that is extremely needed on this earth. Just like our body needs a heart, needs a lung, they may not like each other because they have completely different functions, but the body can't exist without both of them as a whole. And the universe as a whole can't exist without your purpose. It's important. And if you have any ideas of thinking about going down any kind of route to take you away from this universe before your time, trust me, it will always get better in the end, and the storm will pass away. Even if you feel that your issues were even like more crazier than mine, which a lot of people 100% have that, and I can't, it's hard to speak on that. I still believe 100% without a doubt that if you give it time, that the storm will pass and you will find the light again. Everything around us is always moving. Newton's second law is F equals ma. So your force equals your mass times your acceleration. And what acceleration is when you're standing still, you have no velocity and you have no acceleration. When you're going a constant miles per hour or feet per second, you have a constant velocity but no acceleration. And so there's a frame where you can kind of go with that, and it feels like that's not even moving. But when you're accelerating, you're moving in all different frames. And so the world is always moving around us. You can sit in your room all day with the curtains closed and kind of just take it day by day and not do anything yourself, but the world's going to keep moving. That to me is like being a velocity constant. But if you're going forward with it, and no matter what, not letting anything stop you, then you start to have acceleration, which gives you force in this world. And that is really how you attack, is no matter what life may throw at you, just keep moving and keep going, exercising, keep writing, keep whatever your craft is, keep studying, learning, and don't let anything stop you. Because there will be things trying to stop you, and that's the test of life. When I was in depression, I was at a velocity constant. It was real hard to get moving again, and it took a lot of introspection and looking at very traumatic events in my childhood. Like I forgot about my brain kind of blocked it out. And when I went to really deep therapy, I took the time to really try to heal from it. Literally, like letting weights go, that enabled me to start moving again and feel lighter and let it all go in the past and go forward. Everything with an electron, right, that is changing energy states will give off an electromagnetic wave, right? And that is how your phones work. So your iPhone gives out radio waves. That's how spacecraft work. We give radio waves out. And it's a certain frequency. And so I know that Voyager spacecraft, I can get to the frequency that we sent it at. And if I put my antenna exactly at that frequency, I'll pick up the signal. And I think as humans, we all have frequencies too. And so if I'm giving a negative frequency out, like, I hate the world, everybody's doing this, the good people are going to be like, we know that person. I'm not going to let that negativity come into my life. But if I'm putting out like, yeah, I'm trying to change and I'm trying not to see everybody as a monolith, and I'm just going to do the best I can and just get the good people are going to be like, hey, we see you. I was there once. Let me hang out with you one time. Let me give you. And like, I've really felt that in both ways. And so I think it really comes down to you, no matter what. And how you are feeling about yourself is most likely how people are going to feel about you because of that frequency. And what frequency you're giving out is the one you're going to attract. Like how I can set my antenna to listen to Voyagers coming out. I have an antenna too, where I'll listen to people that are like me. So if I'm negative all the time, I'm going to find people that are negative all the time, and it's only going to enhance the negativity. But if I'm positive all the time, I'm going to probably find people that are positive all the time. It's going to enhance the positivity. Roots in Black churches kept loot in raptures, and fractured past became words of pastors. Near a disaster, I looked up to the asters and prayed to masters, please shepherd our pastures. Again, true heart must win. Between grounds and crowns, she emits balance. And amid guilty conscience, spirits among us. No time for drama, no need for mama. It resonates calmest for all beneath us. So listen to whispers of a flower, wisdom it forfeits. Freedom before honor, the delicate is strongest. No potion exists where outcome is immortal, because life is a portal, and the other side knows
it. First of all, whenever I think of anybody working at NASA, before Hidden Figures, I really just think of a bunch of people sitting in a room looking at a great big screen. I wonder if it's, that's just my thought about NASA.
The screen does exist. I mean, I think they sit at the screen when someone's going up. I don't think they sit at the screen when they're doing their
but they never show in movies. They never really depict any other component to working at NASA other than sitting in the control room. So it's like a bunch of people looking at a movie. And what do they do when there's nothing launching? Just look.
I think they're mixing stuff. I think they have chemicals, and then they're doing math, and they're like writing down numbers. I bet that happens at NASA. Yeah, probably at NASA.
Okay, hey, I need to go get a job at NASA. Maybe I will go. Okay, the point is, I don't know about you, Bob, but I definitely remember when I was making a decision to move a little bit further in my transition, and with my medical transition specifically, obviously finding a doctor is a thing. Like, that's something you have to do because, you need a doctor if you're going to do not only surgeries, but more importantly, the mental health component to a medical transition, which a lot of people overlook. And so like finding a therapist and all this stuff was really, really, really difficult. And I remember, and I think this is something that a lot of people who are queer and who have a coming out to sort of figure out, I felt a lot of isolation and uncertainty and anxiety, way more than probably the most that I've ever felt in any particular point in life. And so with that being said, our next guest is, you'll be listening to anonymously so that they can feel free to share their stories on what it's like to be Muslim and identify as non-binary and also be in the closet currently. And they actually have a really wonderful opportunity and so generously agreed to allow us to air a session with Jessica Fleming, who is a licensed professional counselor specializing in mental health and trauma, who speaks to our anonymous guest. So here it is.
So I grew up in a Sudanese household. My parents are immigrants, and I was raised Muslim, which really conflicted a lot with my identity as a non-binary and queer individual. In Islam, being queer is a sin, homosexuality is a sin, especially in countries like Sudan, or like I have family that lives in Saudi Arabia or in Dubai. In those countries, it's very taboo and it's very frowned upon. So it's a real struggle with trying to accept who I am, knowing that like my family members will never be able to get to know who that is. There's the social aspect, like your family will most likely disown you. In the religious aspect, like you'll go to hell, you'll suffer, like it's very similar to what Christians believe, like you're going to suffer, you're going to burn in hell. I came out to my parents and my siblings because they live in America. They have seen queer people, they know about queer people. But as for the rest of my family that lives in Sudan or Saudi or Dubai, they are never going to be able to know this about me. And not just because like I want to maintain that relationship with them, but because like if I come out to them, I'm putting my parents at risk of being disowned and my siblings, and they'll be cut off from our family, which is already it's already so difficult for them because they already live a world away. So they don't get to see them as that often, and if I let them know this part of me, I know that the gap is going to become even bigger. It'll just make our lives fall apart. I constantly struggle with feeling like a disappointment. Um, my parents, they came to America. My dad came with $100 and he made a career for himself, and he just made so many sacrifices for me, and I feel like I let them down by making them raise somebody who ended up being queer and n- not the daughter that they thought they had. Uh, so I struggle a lot with the anxiety of that, and I get really stuck in depressive episodes because I want to be the best for my parents. I want to make up and compensate for the fact that they had to raise a queer child. It's a lot of ignoring the struggles that I'm feeling and the way I'm suffering and isolated. Struggling to get out of bed, um, forgetting to eat, and like diving into my work to the point where I'm like putting off being physically sick just so I can accomplish whatever like classwork needs to get done, or just ignoring any of my basic needs so I can look good as a student, and then eventually I'll be a successful person with some kind of successful career. I struggle with interacting with people and making friends, so I'm isolated a lot. I have my sister, but outside of her and one friend from my sophomore year in high school, I'm pretty much by myself most of the time. There was a bit of a learning gap because when I came out, it was mostly as non-binary, and like a side thing was like, oh, I'm queer and I love everyone. So they didn't really know what non-binary was. When I came out, I actually used like a PowerPoint presentation with sources and just as much information as I can to back up how I'm feeling. They weren't the most happy initially, um, because they just genuinely didn't understand what being non-binary was. Like they had that mindset that they're like boys and girls, and yes, some people are transgender, but they didn't really know that there was this in between. But over time, they did their own research, and I see that they are trying to understand who I am. It's just um, it's tough because I've been out to them for over a year at this point, and they still haven't called me by my preferred pronouns, which are they them. So I see that they still recognize me as a daughter instead of just a child, as their kid. ever since I was a kid, I knew that I wasn't a girl, but I would force myself into, like, hyper femininity. Like, I'd get a bunch of pink stuff, like, I was just like, girls are supposed to like pink, they're supposed to like dresses. I like, painted my room pink. I got, like, bright feminine, bed sheets and just anything that would make me, like, present, more like a woman, and it wasn't until the pandemic where I actually, like, couldn't distract myself from this identity crisis I was having. I constantly feel like I don't know who I am, and I worry sometimes, like, "Oh, what if, like, me saying I'm non-binary, what if that's just it's not true? What if I'm just doing this for attention? What if what I'm feeling isn't actually real, it's not valid?" That's one of the scariest things because, like, I don't know who I am. I don't know what name I wanna go by. I don't know how I wanna dress. I don't know if I want, like, corrective, uh, surgery or gender affirming care. I I'm just kind of in this void of not knowing. When it comes to being online, I have to be a bit careful because I do have some family that use, social media. I have, cousins that are on TikTok, so, like, I have to be careful about, like, what I'm reposting, who I'm following, things like that. I'm not in therapy, I'm not taking any medication. I really want to, but, I never find the time for it, like, I try looking, for a person that I can talk to, but it doesn't really go anywhere. At the moment, my parents are mostly focusing on getting help for, my sister who also struggles with her mental health as well. I don't really wanna go too in depth in that 'cause that's her business, but they need to focus on her more right now, so I'm kind of putting aside the things that I feel just so she can get the care that she needs, and, I mean, eventually it'll probably come back to me, I hope. I wanna get to a point where I'm comfortable with my gender identity. I wanna be more active in the community and participate in, like, queer art. I wanna try drag. I wanna be able to do, like, all these different kinds of things. I wanna be at that point where I'm not just absorbed in school and thinking about the future, so I wanna be able to live in the present and just get to a point of, like, clarity. I tell myself that it gets better eventually. Um, there's actually a quote that Bob said at some point, he said, "Everything works out in the end, and if it's not working out, it's not the end." And that's something that I think about a lot, like, day to day, and I guess I tell myself that, like, that's so true. Like, it's going to be okay eventually. I just need to find the resources to help myself and just really work on myself and figure it out and like not be don't be afraid to be vulnerable about the things that I feel.
My name is Jessica. I am a licensed mental health counselor in the District of Columbia. What that means is that I'm an LPC, which means I'm an independently licensed counselor. So I have my full license. I'm also a certified trauma professional. So DC used to be called, and some people still call it Chocolate City. It's very, very Black. And so although it is not, it used to be a majority Black. But it's definitely a very high demographic. And the areas I actually work with are referred to as they're east of the river. So it's actually where a majority of the Black population tends to reside in DC. There's a lot of displacement, a lot of gentrification going on. But for the most part, the Northeast and the Southeast there are definitely a lot of people of color. I wanted a career where I could be myself. And that was really important to me. I also really enjoyed helping people, and I've always just been really curious about psychology and why people do the things they do. But when I had my first real job in a psychiatric facility, I always say once you start helping people, it's kind of hard to stop. And so that's when I went on and got my counseling degree. I did some different things, and this is where I've ended up. I think people's minds are evolving in terms of getting help more often. Um, Definitely has its issues. I think the mental health system in general has its issues. I actually was doing a workshop about mental health the other day in the community, and they asked me when mental health kind of had started to become a topic, and I was like, well, people always discuss mental health. It was just really the way that they talked about it or didn't talk about it. Sometimes they would just put people away, and it's really evolved. And then they started talking about how sometimes in Black families, it's kind of like that secret, like everybody knows, but the person may not necessarily get treatment. And I think that's changing, but at the same time, we have to be realistic that the system was really never built for us or by us. And so getting more into those therapeutic modalities that are really more for our people, for our struggles, and addressing the things that we go through, and making sure also that we have competent clinicians. We're sort of clinicians everywhere, but we're definitely. It wasn't until I became a counselor I realized that we have a crisis in counseling, a crisis in psychology, a crisis in medicine. We only make up barely like 2 to 5% of all those fields when it comes to Black people. So it's got a long way to go, but it's getting there. There aren't a lot of modalities for us by us. I think there are resources. But at the same time, I don't know how necessarily geared they are to the intersectionality of Black, being Black and being queer. And then specifically like different things that you might go through as a youth as opposed to an adult. I still don't think the specificity there is with people just being either open or available. If not like the specific like type of counselor like someone would want who may identify like similar to them as well. There was someone in my family going to therapy, but I never had a therapist until I think when I was in graduate school. And it was interesting because it was something that was recommended. Like when you go through, sometimes you go through counseling program, they want you to understand what that experience is like. And that was really the first time that I actually went. But I did not have a therapist growing up. No, it wasn't. I definitely believe my parents would have sent me to a therapist if they had felt that it was appropriate. And then the other thing is that it kind of depends on where you are. I feel like where I grew up, it's not that people don't go to a therapist, but a child may have gone to more like a behavioral health specialist than a therapist. So I actually was working with people. Like I said, I work in a psychiatric facility and also, in treatment facilities and things like that. And so you do have what they call vicarious trauma, where people are talking to you about traumatic events or even traumatic events happen. I mean, I've, witnessed people attempting, to take their life and things like that. And so you do definitely have to, the so let me start off by saying that work is not necessarily for everyone. That said, if it is something that you are going to be doing, you definitely have to have self care. And I know self care is a term that gets thrown around, but when you actually do it, it looks like basically a routine. And it's not really a routine, but it's kind of like a lifestyle. I always tell my clients to try to build a lifestyle because it's one thing to have coping skills, but if you're not actively doing things in your life to allow you to experience joy, for healing from stress management is one of the biggest things that we all can do, but we don't do. So if you let all that build up, then it's really going to affect you. And I'm not saying that things like that don't affect me, but at the same time, I've been doing this for a while. So I turn to joy every single day. And I do mean every day. Like I will listen to music, I will dance, I will do anything that just gets that emotion and that dopamine going in your head and like all those feel good thoughts and feelings and stuff like that. It's an interesting thing trying to figure out who you are and how you want to express yourself. And in different ways, a lot of people go through that. And I think the most important thing for you to remember is that this is just a moment in time. It's a very important moment in time. But the fact of the matter is, these battles have been fought before. And I wouldn't get too caught up in this moment right now. and don't ever let that steal your joy. I would say the most important thing would be to keep moving and keep doing what you're doing, and definitely try to find your tribe. But most importantly, finding people who are exactly like you is great. Finding people who accept you and care about you is even better. And so finding those people who are just going to allow you to be you in those spaces where you are able to just thrive and have that joy is going to be the most important thing. Um, I get it. It's scary out here. It's really when you really get down to it, it's really frightening on a lot of different aspects. I mean, they won't even like they need curriculum around like queer studies and different things like that, and they're banning all kinds of things. But what I would also say is that your experience right now is very unique. And I would definitely make sure that that fits into the narrative, because without queer people speaking up and letting people know who they are and how important they are to society, we would not have gotten this far. So I know it's a big, big responsibility, but we need you. And the struggle needs you. And so I understand it's really easy to go towards the negative, but we are going to get through this, and it is going to be okay. But definitely just like try to get a support system and seek therapy, if that's what you feel like is best for you, but definitely make sure you have a support system. The caller had said something about how they wanted to be more vulnerable, and I got to say I cannot think of being more vulnerable than they already were. Just kind of, and I don't know what the context was for them necessarily calling in, but just, being uh feeling free enough to be able to share your story is such a big deal. And it seemed like they really just had a lot of like good insight. And I totally understand what it's like to be young and to not completely have all the answers. But the fact of the matter is, unfortunately, that's just one of the consequences of being young. One of the beautiful things about of being young is the fact that you have your whole life in front of you to figure a lot of these things out. They talked a lot about their parents, and I wanted to first commend them on coming on the way they came out. I love the PowerPoint. I thought that was just like so adorable, and I loved it because it's clearly so them. And first of all, I think one of the things when you are doing something like sharing an identity that maybe people aren't necessarily familiar with is give them that vocabulary. It's true, they probably have no idea what you're talking about, and that's okay. Because the fact of the matter is, no matter how you identify, they have to get to know you. And so it's most important for them to understand what that means for you to be non-binary, not just non-binary, but what that means for you. And so I think giving that vocabulary is probably one of the best things you can do. And I understand that they're still, you said misgendering you or not getting your pronouns right. Um, I understand that can definitely sting when it happens. I don't know what the context for it necessarily is, but I would say try to give yourself and them some grace. Um, they have spent however many years you've been on this earth getting to know you as you said, their daughter. And so, what I would say is to kind of, gently remind them, because obviously this is important to you. But at the same time, how you have known someone for several years is that's kind of a pattern that's in your head. So I wouldn't necessarily take it as a slight. It's kind of just how the brain works, and it's going to take them, not as much time, but like some time to kind of work through this is who you are now. But at the same time, I would definitely encourage maybe having some conversations or maybe just some sidebars once in a while with your parents, because I feel like the only way that they are going to be able to adjust to your identity is to get to know you and for you to keep showing that to them. And I understand that's probably part of that vulnerability that you're trying to find and trying to show. But it sounds like your parents, are understanding, and that they just kind of need more of that information and vocabulary about what this really is for you. And then also, I wanted to talk about how your parents, you said, were immigrants, and apples really don't fall that far from trees. And I would just kind of look into maybe, I don't know if you really understand their immigrant story, but sometimes when people immigrate, they themselves are isolated. They're looked at as different in their community, in their family, and they may have actually gone through some of the same feelings that you're feeling for different reasons in their life. they are kind of the different ones. They're the ones who moved to America. You know, they left their home and they did something that was different in their culture. And so maybe tap into that because you may be more like your parents than you think. Finding people who, you know, maybe aren't even necessarily in the queer community, but definitely accept you and are willing to just like, you know, roll with you no matter what is going on. Because you even said like, although this is obviously not a phase, this is definitely how you're identifying. You know, you have some decisions that you haven't made yourself. So one, like I said, give yourself some grace, but give yourself time to evolve as a person, and just get to know you, and then that self-expression and that vulnerability that you're looking for, which I think that you already have a whole lot of it, is going to come in time. So I'm a member of the American Counseling Association, and we have a monthly like newsletter thing that comes out, and they just had something on the very front page about generational trauma, and I was like, yes, thank you, because this is just one more thing when I'm talking about for us by us, and it doesn't necessarily have to be by us, but we know in the field that generational trauma is very real, and not just for, you know, people of color, but it's something that just isn't really talked about or isn't really like delved into in counseling. So the fact that it's finally being talked about is really important. But as far as dealing with it, you know, it's something about generational trauma is that you feel it. Even if you don't know what it is, you know that it's going on. And so, what I see a lot of is that self expression just coming out a lot in counseling. And so, a lot of my job is to help people, you know, process that and then also connect that to what's going on now. You see it a lot, like with parent child relationships, and a lot of it's being like directly handed down. And so sometimes that's a really easy way to address it. But sometimes, you know, trauma in general, people a lot of time it goes one way or another. Either you know something has happened and you're just not completely sure about how it's affected you, or you know that you you're being affected by something but you're just not completely sure what it is. And so it will come out in like the things that you do, your feelings, your behaviors and things like that. But yeah, I think it's one of those things, specifically. And then when you talk about like social events like police brutality or you know, critical race theory and things like that being banned, those things bring that up in us. And sometimes we'll have like anxiety or fatigue or like stress reactions, and we want to completely understand like what's going on. So I think just kind of connecting, that's one of the things I've actually been working on, helping people understand the connection between the physical body and the mental health aspect. And that a lot of this is going to come out in your behaviors and in, you know, your body and in your fatigue and all those different things. So yeah, that's where I'm at, and just kind of like helping people kind of make that connection. But it's definitely something that needs to be talked about a lot more. Yeah. So here's the thing, when you realize that something is going on with you, the first thing is one to obviously acknowledge that that's what's going on. Obviously, a lot of times we will then go to the internet and try to find things. And I do think that the internet can be a lot of great, have a lot of things. There are a lot of great pages on Instagram, and I'm not on TikTok, but I hear that there's a lot of great stuff happening there too. But the thing is, we have to be realistic about what's going to work for us. And I think one of the most difficult things for people to sometimes come up with are coping skills. And so coping skills are things that are just like when it comes to like stress relief, right? So I like to listen to music. I know exercise helps me. There are going to be different things that are going to be specifically helpful for different things that you're going through. So processing your thoughts, the thing is that it's good to go to therapy because you don't want to like dump your trauma on like your friends. However, having a good conversation is really helpful. So getting to a point where either you're going to therapy or you just have like that like really good friend of yours that you can talk to is really important. So being able to process what's going on is definitely I think one of the biggest reasons people go to therapy. But if you've got like a good friend you can talk to, that's good. The other thing is making sure, like if you've gone through something traumatic or if you're going through stress, you have to take care of your physical body. So it doesn't necessarily have to be like an everyday routine, but as long as you're managing stress in some type of way, that's going to give you the mental clarity, be able to kind of go about and deal with your issues a lot better. When you are stressed, there's so many different things that happen to your body when you're stressed. People don't even realize, and we absorb stress every single day. So whether or not you're able to process your thoughts, whether or not you're able to manage the things that are going on with your body are going to be very important. Things like obviously exercising, yoga is actually really good. I wish I knew how to do more yoga because it's really good for helping you process trauma in your body, as well as relieving stress. So that's a really good one. Meditation is really good. I know it's hard for people to do meditation, but meditation doesn't have to last forever. It can truly be 5 minutes of you just sitting in silence and listening to some soft music. But the more that you can have clarity of mind and the more that you can clear out stress in your body, I would definitely recommend those two things the most, because that's going to help you function. A lot of things happen when we have, different things going on in our lives, and it affects our eating, our sleeping, our cognitive abilities, our memory, our emotions. So being able to process that and being able to do things that are going to help you relieve like any type of stress or emotional distress that you're in are going to be like the top things that I would recommend, and going to therapy. But I understand that we're not going to warrant everything that goes on in our life therapy eligible, so you're going to have to take care of yourself. So those are just a couple ways I would recommend.
You know something I've done to work on my mental health? I have, and this I am not recommending anything for
Oh
anyone.
no.
I want to say that out loud. I'm not
Do we want to
recommending
hear
anything.
this?
Well, I mean, maybe it'll help someone,
Okay.
but again, don't do it. You know, I eat what I want to eat. I used to stress so much about eating and so much about food, and somehow I landed on this side of TikTok that's all about like healthy alternatives to instead
Cake.
of eating ice cream, blend ice and then put one drop of milk in it and then just crunch on the ice and just think about and then sniff the ice cream and then you know what? No, I'm just like I just eat the things I want to eat these
No.
days. And it really has made me a lot happier and I'm a lot less stressed out.
I do think, I mean, listen, I agree. Ice cream and candy and popcorn. I mean, like, listen, if I was the gremlin, the gremlins, they run
Where
around.
is this going?
You know how the gremlins,
No, please continue.
you know how the gremlins go run around and terrorize the town, and they go from
Yes.
the house out to the mechanic's shop, to the library, to the movie theater,
The
to
science
the
lab and
place,
stuff.
and they go to everything and mess everything up. I'm that gremlin that is like in the popcorn machine, but just stays there. You know what I mean? Like once
Do
we
you
get
remember
to
the
the
science
snack bar,
gremlin?
I ain't going anywhere else. Y'all go on over to the
I,
library.
I always thought I'd be the science gremlin, the one who had like the
Oh
lab
yeah.
coat and was like, no, Monet makes fun of me because I carry around popcorn seasoning in my purse like everywhere I go. And
Girl,
Monet was like,
you ain't the only
why do
one.
you have Monet was like, why do you have popcorn seasoning in your purse? And then that night, someone showed up with some popcorn, and guess who had the seasoning?
And lo and behold, one of the worst things you can get is when you get to sit down and you get in your mouth all fixed and ready to get some popcorn because you're going to have a movie or watch something and some popcorn comes out. One of the worst things you can have is some dry, unseasoned, room temperature popcorn. And sometimes they serve it to you in the movie theater. If you go to the art house, like independent films, art house theaters, I don't know what it is about them that they can't have no damn butter and salt and pepper or whatever they got. They just give you like literally just pieces of kernels popped hot, and they give it to you. And
Yeah,
it's like that's
but if you go to these
disgusting.
if you go to these AMC's, baby, they will drown.
They will.
They're like,
They'll give you just butter.
they're like, would you like a little bit of popcorn with your butter?
Yeah, and the answer is no. This balance is just enough. Mostly butter with a piece of popcorn. Thank you.
I also go for walks.
To the popcorn stand. Me too. I girl, let me tell you, you want to count steps? You'd better put the camera between my room and the refrigerator. I guarantee you I've walked back and forth to that thing more than I've left the house. Oh no. This is too much.
I love you so much. I miss you very, very much.
Girl, I miss you too.
And I'm coming to New York City for a long stretch, and I'll see you.
I can't not
That
wait.
sounds so menacing.
Here was me last week waiting.
Well, I know where to get your keys. Ask the bodega man.
Shh. Oh my God, I should not have announced that.
No one knows what your bodega is.
Yeah, well, they do. I used to do that. I don't do it anymore. He doesn't have my keys. Yes. Yeah. Is there anything else?
Well, I love you very much.
I love you very much. Thank you, everyone, for listening to our fabulous podcast. And I want to give a special shout out and thanks to our production team: Charlene Westbrook, Tracy Marquez, Amelia Rittheller, and Corey Nixon, and of course La Femme Bear, who gave us the fabulous music that you heard throughout the podcast. So,
and then you're about to listen to right now.
Here we go. Hit it. Let the music play.
If you are currently struggling with your mental health, thoughts of depression, and/or suicide, please reach out to one of these resources. Suicide Prevention Lifeline, call 1-800-273-8255. The Trevor Project Lifeline, which is support specifically for queer people in crisis, call 1-866-488-7386. The Trans Lifeline, staffed by trans people for trans people. Call 1-877-565-8860.